team, I hope you're all well. Today I'm going to start a new reading vlog. You will have probably seen the title of this video, but I take part in our fantasy and I have done for the last 2 years. I started in 2023 and now it's 2024's round. It runs, if you don't know, it's a reading challenge that is run over on Reddit, and they have this bingo board and there are prompts, and it runs from the 1st of April till the 31st of March every year. So as we come up to the end of 2024's round, I had a quick look-see at my tracker and I have 7 books left, which seems like a lot. However, I have novellas down for all of them. So I mentioned this very briefly in my spring reading plans. My TBR has changed a little bit since then, but I wanted to do a little bit of a reading vlog trying to achieve this. It's not very often I actually complete a TBR I set for myself. Some of the books may have changed over the year, and as I've mentioned, one of the books is going to change now for one of the prompts. So let's very quickly run through what it is that I have left, and then at the end of this video I will essentially give you my Our Fantasy 2024 bingo wrap up and let you know exactly what I read and how the year went for me before 2025 starts. So one of the prompts that I do have left is the short story collection. It's essentially like 5 short stories, and this can either be a collection of 5 short stories or just 5 short stories that you've read at random. So, or 5 novellas. I've made the decision to pick this changed a lot actually throughout the year, and I've made the decision to settle on the creature feature collection. I'll show a picture of it here. It's a horror collection, and I've read the first 2 of this, so I have 4 more left to go, and I'm gonna just read the rest of them. I only need to do 5, but I'm gonna just read them all, which will be 6 of them, and this will complete that prompt. So I'm just gonna do the other 4 of these. They're very short. You can get them on Kindle Unlimited and then get the audiobook for free on Audible. So I'm just going to do that, and I really enjoyed the first 2. So I'm excited to continue on with this collection. Then I had, for POC author, The Deep by Rivers Solomon, which is a book that's been on my TBR for ages, and it's about time that I got to this one. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to love this or not, but I'm excited to finally get to it. So I will be reading this one for that. I'll go through the synopsis of each of them once I'm getting to a point where I'm picking them up. Then for space opera, I did have Exit Strategy by Martha Wells, another novella, so this will help me continue on with the Murderbot Diaries. This is book 4 in this series, and I do have the rest on my shelves somewhere there. So I would like to be able to continue on with these, and maybe I can fit, you know, another one of these on in 2025 and continue on with the series. So this one for space opera. And then the last one that I did have was a book published in the 90s. This one again changed quite a bit. I did have Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton down for this one, but I'm not in the mood to read that, and it is a chunkier book than I would like for completing this in such a short space of time now at the end of March. So then I had another look-see, and One Piece Volume 4, because that's where I'm up to in this series, was published in 1998. So that would have counted for this prompt, and that's what I was going to move on to. Last night I sat down to try and get ahead with this vlog and read that volume. I'm just not in the mood to read it. I think you've got to be in a specific mood to be reading manga, and especially that kind of manga as well. Like, I read the first 3 volumes back to back in a Gavin recommends me manga kind of video a while ago, probably last year now actually, towards the beginning of last year maybe, and I haven't moved on since with it. And what I don't want to do is ruin my enjoyment of it by picking it up when I'm not in the mood. So what you can do with Our Fantasy is actually substitute one prompt for a prompt that was on a previous Our Fantasy bingo board. So I had a look at 2023's bingo board, and I've made the decision to substitute that prompt published in the 90s for the prompt sequel. Very simple prompt. The hard mode for this prompt, because some of the prompts have hard modes as well, in which it literally means nothing, but you don't get extra points or anything, but it's just to make it a little bit more difficult. The hard mode for this is a book 3 or more in a series, and I've actually made the decision to go for book 9 in a series, which is Mislaid in Parts Half Known by Shauna Maguire. This is book 9 in the Way with Children series, and I haven't got to it yet. Book 10 is already out, so I do want to get to this one so that I can then move on to book 10, maybe put book 10 on 2025's bingo board if it fits somewhere. And it is another little novella. So we do have 7 novellas to try and get through in this vlog, and I'm really looking forward to it and to complete our fantasy bingo board, and then I will run through everything that I read for our fantasy 2024 bingo and let you know how well I did. I'm very excited. I'm not sure what I'm going to start off with, but I'll come back to you when I've made that decision and let you know what the synopsis is of that book. So let's do this. Okay, hello. It's a little bit later. I am going to start off with those creature feature short story novellas, and the first one that I am going to get into is It Waits in the Woods, because that's the next one I'm up to, by Josh Malerman. I've already read The Pram by Joe Hill, and I gave that one 4 stars. It was terrifying. I actually still remember that one. And then Ankle Snatcher I gave 3.5 stars. I actually think that that maybe should be on par with The Pram, because that instilled a fear in me from being a child and being terrified of having my feet out of the quill or, you know, over the edge of the bed if I had a gap between the bottom of the bed and the floor. It played on my childhood fears, okay? So, It Waits in the Woods. This one is, I've read it, by the way, so I'm just going to tell you the synopsis and then I'm going to tell you what I thought of it. So the synopsis for this one is: some chilling campfire tales ring too true to ignore for one young woman an urban legend calls her into the woods. The dense Michigan forest, haunting Wales, the clip-clop of demon hooves on a bridge to nowhere. It's more than a tall tale to Brenda Jennings, whose sister disappeared in those woods one fateful night. 3 years later, on a solo stakeout in the dark, Brenda goes in after her. She's desperate for answers and terrified to find what lies waiting on the other side of the bridge. This was really creepy. We do start off with Brenda's sister going missing, and then quite, you know, there's the whole looking for, etc, etc, and it's kind of left open. And then 3 years later, pretty quickly we get to a point where it's 3 years later, and Brenda is the sort of person that carries her camera around everywhere with her. She's, you know, everything's a film, and she carries her camera around with her all the time. She makes the decision to go back into the woods and camp out in there and see if she can find her sister or any clue as to what happened to her sister. So she's got a camera with her, she's trying to film everything, and then she finds this bridge is part of this tale, and the tale is essentially about this monster that has no face and steals people and then steals their faces. And she finds part of that tale. There's this bridge that nobody's ever been able to find before, but she ends up finding it and going across it, and it, you know, goes from there. And this was quite atmospheric. It was a little slow to get into, I will say, considering it's only 52 pages long, an hour and 43 minutes I think it is, or an hour and 30 odd minutes, can't remember, on audio. It took a minute to get into, but once we were in that forest and the creepy shit started happening, it was terrifying. The narrator for this was fantastic. She did a great job at putting on a really, really horrific, terrifying voice for the monster. I shit my pants. I'd had this on quite loud of a volume because I was downstairs making some lunch. So because I was pottering about the kitchen so that I could hear it no matter where I was in the kitchen, I turned it up quite loud and forgot when I came up to eat my lunch. So all of a sudden this monstrous voice came on over like on the audiobook, and I shit my pants. I literally stopped what I was doing, I stopped eating and just sat there for like a minute and was like, what the fuck is that? It was terrifying. It was so scary. Because it was so loud as well, I immediately turned it down. Shit my pants, I'm not gonna lie. This was good. I gave it 4 stars. I do like it when, you know, there's a terrifying tale and then it kind of becomes reality in the horror stories. But yeah, I think the audiobook really brought this story to life. These creature features are actually very, very good, and the audiobooks are really, really well done. So I did like that one. The next one in this series, I might as well, while I'm here, tell you what the next one is about, because I will probably go into that at some some point soon. Maybe today, maybe not, I don't know. So the next one is In Bloom by Paul Tremblay. I don't have a great record with Paul Tremblay, I will say. I have a good record with Josh Malerman. I've read The House at the Bottom of the Lake, and I've read what have I read? Incidents Around the House. I think have I read anything else? No, I do want to read Bird Box though by Josh Malerman. So Paul Tremblay, I've read The Cabin at the End of the World. I think I gave that 2.5, 3 stars. Horror movie, I DNF'd by Paul Tremblay. The Pallbearers Club, I gave 2 stars, didn't like that one. So I don't have a great track record with Paul Tremblay, and I probably will never pick a full-length novel up from him again. However, this is a short story, so 35 pages. There's something in the water in this hallucinatory short story. Journalist Heidi Cohen is in Cape Cod investigating the sources of recurring toxic algae blooms along the coast. I feel like there's a word missing in that synopsis. Journalist Heidi Cohen is in Cape Cod investigating the sources of recurring toxic algae blooms along the coast. Investigating the sources of recurring toxic algae that blooms along the coast. Surely there's a word missing there, or am I going mad? This is the reason why I struggle to physically read fantasy books, because I will do this repeatedly. Get stuck. If there's a word missing, or a sentence doesn't make sense, or I can't pronounce the word, I will get stuck until it makes sense. Anyway, a local named Jimmy has his own theory for her. Every year, the fetid growth gets worse, but it's been going on longer than anyone knows. Decades ago, something happened to Jimmy that he's never forgotten. Is Heidi ready for the real story? Interesting. Okay, looking forward to it. This one's got the lowest rating of all of them, actually. Fascinating. 3.05. Okay, so that will be the next one that I go into. We'll see what it's like. Okay, update on reading. I've actually finished the short story collection. I didn't see the point in keep coming back and forth every like hour to let you know my updates on these. I've just binged the last 3. So In Bloom was the last one that I told you about, and this one sounded kind of interesting, but the execution of it, I said to you that I haven't had a good track record with Paul Tremblay, and I think this is definitely the end of me keep trying with Paul Tremblay. This one, the execution was absolutely terrible. This felt like we got chapter 1 of a story, and then we got part of chapter 7, and then we got the beginning of chapter 8. And that was it. We got no ending, we got no context, we got no explanation. It was very messy. It's like this was originally a novel, and then the author just decided that he was going to pick a little bit of this chapter out, a little bit of that chapter out, and a little bit of that chapter out, and think that he left it ambiguous at the end. He didn't leave it ambiguous, he left it entirely fucking open. There is no end to this story, and I didn't like this one at all. There was no atmosphere, it wasn't terrifying. Because of the lack of context to the story and the lack of explanation, it wasn't terrifying at all. There was no atmosphere. I wouldn't have said this was a horror at all. And yeah, I just think that this could have been much better, and it's a shame because it's brought the whole collection down as a whole, because the first 3 books in this series I really enjoyed, and the last 2 books, spoiler alert, I have enjoyed. So everything got 3.5 stars or above, except this got 1 star. Really didn't like it. If I could have given it 0 stars, I would have done. It got 1 star. It was not good at all. 35 pages. It could have been better. Then I went on to Best of Luck by Jason Mott, and the synopsis for this one is, did you ever hear the one about the man with a string of bad luck? For best friends with vastly different fortunes, what's left to hash out other than a forced confession at gunpoint? All that destitute, sickly and grieving Will demands is that monstrously successful Barry admit to draining all the luck right out of him, like blood. As the standoff escalates, the truth is not only the only thing ready to come out. So this one is following two best friends, Will and Barry, and obviously Will has had very, very bad luck in his life. There are multiple things that have happened in his life that constitute as bad luck. I'm not going to spoil what, but there have been many bad things. Barry, on the other hand, seems to have had a very long string of good luck, and Will has gotten it in his head for reasons that Barry has taken all of his luck. So instead of sharing the luck, Barry's taken it all and Will's ended up with nothing except grief and pain and a horrendous string of bad luck. So Will's got Barry at gunpoint and would like an explanation and also an apology as to why he's done this thing. And this takes a turn. It's not the story I was expecting. It takes a turn. It was good. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was a good story. I will say that I did get myself a little bit confused on occasion between Will and Barry. I listened to these stories on audio because the audiobooks are very good. But I've seen other people on Goodreads saying in their reviews that they also, when reading physically, they also got the two mixed up because they read very similar, and the audiobook also didn't distinguish very well between the two characters. So once the turn happened, I kind of got confused who each of them was, and just for a split second couldn't remember who was the one with the good luck and who was the one with the bad luck. But other than that, it was a good story and I had a good time, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. I haven't read from Jason Mott before, but I'd be interested in doing so in the future. And then the last one, Big Bad by Chandler Baker, I would be very interested from reading from this author again. She is a female author, which is great. I didn't realise there were any in this collection. I assumed they were all men. So that's good. I did have a good time with this one though. It's very much so got like a parental element to it. The synopsis for it is, for a family trying to make an isolated farmhouse into a home, fear and rage are getting harder to control. The Strauss family is on a knife's edge. Sam is a resentful stay-at-home dad. Rachel feels the restlessness in her blood returning. Their children are getting out of hand, and a recent mudslide has forced the wolves out of the woods to look for food. As dusk falls and tensions rise, the family must come together to survive the night from the threats outside and those within. This was really, really interesting. So we've got this family, mum, dad, 2 daughters, and the daughters do play quite an important role in this story. They've obviously gone to this farmhouse, they're trying to set things up, and we get to see this whole, you know, resentful side from dad, but we also start to see some other cracks within this family as well, with the mum and with the relationship between mum and dad, the relationship between dad and daughters, and a mysterious person turns up at the farmhouse looking for Rachel. She's nowhere to be found at some point in the story for reasons. And yeah, the story just kind of goes from there. Other than that, I can't say much more without spoiling it. From what the synopsis says, it literally tells you nothing. So I really enjoyed this one. I guessed where it was going throughout the story pretty early on, but it was a good one. I liked the storytelling of it, I liked the writing style, and I'd definitely pick up from Chandler again. I think her writing style is great and I would love to read more from her. So I really liked this one. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I would definitely try from her again. I don't know what else she's done, but I hope there's some horror because I would really be interested in reading more. Cutting Teeth, is that a new one that's coming out? Oh no, 2023. She's done quite a few. Whisper Network looks good. Interesting. So yeah, I'd be interested in reading more from Chandler Baker again, but I have now completed that collection, which completes that prompt. In fact, it completes that prompt and then some, because that prompt was for only 5 short story collection, 5 short stories, and I've done 6. So had a good time with that one. Yeah, it's a shame that Paul Tremblay's story brought this collection down. The Pram I gave 4 stars, which I really enjoyed, by Joe Hill. Ankle Snatcher by Grady Hendrix, I gave 3.5 stars originally. I think that should also be 4 stars because that did shit me up something rotten. It Waits in the Woods by Josh Malerman got 4 stars. In the Bloom got 1. So at this point I've got 3 4 stars and then a 1 star. Best of Luck got 3.5 and Big Bad also got 4. So the overall rating of this collection should have been around a 3.75 maybe 4 star, because that 3.5 is just down a little bit, but it's probably, the overall rating will probably end up being like a 3 star, maybe even lower. It got 4 4 stars, a 3.5 star and a 1 star. Fucking Paul Tremblay. Never again. Anyway, so that's completed that collection, which is great news, and has completed that prompt. So we've got 3 prompts left. So next one I am going to move on to is going to be Rivers Solomon's The Deep. I've had this on my shelves for such a long time, and it's about time I got to it. I do have an arc actually, and I should have already read it, but I haven't done so yet, of Model Home, which is Rivers Solomon's new book. So I do want to get to that one soon as well. The synopsis for this one is: Yetu holds the memories for her people, water-dwelling descendants of pregnant African slave women thrown overboard by slave owners who live idyllic lives in the deep. Their past, too traumatic to be remembered regularly, is forgotten by everyone, save one, the historian. This demanding role has been bestowed on Yetu. Yetu remembers for everyone, and the memories, painful and wonderful, traumatic and terrible, and miraculous, are destroying her. And so she flees to the surface, escaping the memories, the expectations and the responsibilities, and discovers a world her people left behind long ago. This does sound very like super heavy and very traumatic. I think this is why I keep putting this off, to be perfectly honest. Not only that, but I think maybe this is like literary fiction / horror, so we'll see. But I am interested in giving this one a read. It is quite short. There is a longer afterword actually, but 155 pages, and this one is for the prompt of POC author, so this will be the next one that I am going to go into. Hello, I'm here with a reading update for you. I have finished The Deep by Rivers Solomon, and unfortunately I didn't enjoy this one. It's such a shame. This has been on my shelves for longer than I'd like to admit. It's probably, I might have got it new, I don't know, but Bobby did send it to me. Thank you, Bobby, if you're here watching this. Thank you for sending this to me. Unfortunately it just didn't work for me, and I'm really sad about it. I think the premise was super interesting, but I just feel like there's a couple of things going on here that did not work for me with this. There is a lot of rave reviews on this, so I'm so glad it's worked for a lot of other people. Maybe it's my intellect, maybe, I don't know what the reason is, but this was 155 pages. That felt like 700 pages. It took me 2 days to get through this. The audiobook's only 4 hours long, and I obviously speed that up. I had it on about 2.1 times speed, so you know, just shy of 2 hours, and it took me 2 days to get through. It was such a slow read, really slow. It felt very heavy considering it is so short, and I think it may have worked better as a full-length novel, maybe more like a 300-page book. I just wasn't invested in the characters. I don't know, the world building and everything. I just feel like these things could have been fleshed out a little bit more. I feel like we could have got a little bit more context as to what's going on fully, and I just think we could have been given more in order for us maybe to, or me specifically, to care a little bit more. But alas, I've now read it. I did end up giving it 2 stars. I think the concept is very interesting, and the premise is very interesting. I like what Rivers Solomon is trying to do here. For me personally, the execution just didn't quite hit. It just felt really slow and like a huge drag, and it shouldn't have taken me 2 days to get through this at all. So alas, it is now done. So this was for the POC author prompt, and I have now completed it, so that is good news. I'm glad to see this read on my shelves now as well, and essentially come off of my shelves, because it's been on there so long. So I'm glad that I've finally gotten to that one, and I think what we'll do, we've only got 2 left now, so I think what I'm going to do is go into the bigger one of the 2, the longer one of the 2. The audiobook for this one is 4 hours 40 minutes, whereas for Exit Strategy is 3 hours 46. So if I go into this one, the next one is the shortest one left. So this is Mislaid in Parts Half Known by Shauna Maguire, which is book 9 in the Wayward Children series. The Wayward Children series essentially follows a bunch of kids that find themselves themselves going through portals into other worlds. And on occasion, they end up coming back to the real world, and they either don't want to be in the real world or they need some adjustment trying to get back into the real world. So they go to Eleanor West's Wayward Home for Children, Eleanor West's School for Wayward Children, and trying to either adapt back into normal life or wait for their portal to open back up so they can go back to what they now call home. And yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I've really enjoyed the other stories. They're always really good, kind of like palette cleansers as well. Looks like this one we have dinosaurs in, which I'm very excited about. Love me a dinosaur. So this synopsis for this one, I don't think it necessarily spoils anything. We tend to follow different characters, except for every other book we follow these two characters that kind of show up in the other books. I'm fairly certain it's Jack and Jill that we follow, which are twins, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a while since I read one of these because there's another one out now, so it's been like 2 years since I last read one of these, I think. So Portals and Danger, a girl who can find both in the latest book in this series. Antsy, I'm fairly certain we followed Antsy in the last one, which Across the Green Grass Field, or is that the new one? Oh no, that was 4 books ago. Lost in the Moment and Found. I found Antsy's story, actually, I think that was my favourite one, Lost in the Moment and Found, out of all of them so far. I think that was my favourite one because it hit massively just because of some of the themes that were involved in that story. So I'm going to be glad to get back to Antsy, to be fair. Antsy's the latest student to pass through the doors at Eleanor West's School for Wayward Children. When her fellow students realise that Antsy's talent for finding absolutely anything may extend to doors, she's forced to flee in the company of a small group of friends, looking for a way back to the shop where the lost things go. To be sure that Vinetta and Hudson are keeping their promise. Along the way, temptations are dangled, decisions are reinforced, and a departure to a world populated by dinosaurs brings untold dangers and 1 or 2 other surprises. A story that reminds us that finding what you want doesn't always mean finding what you need. I'm so excited to read this one. I did love Antsy's story in the last book, so yeah, very excited to read this one and be back with Antsy because hers was very, very interesting indeed and hit, as I say, the heaviest. So looking forward to this one. This is for the prompt that I have substituted. So the original prompt was for a book set in the 90s. I've substituted it for a prompt on the 2023 board, which was sequel. So we're going to go for this one. So let's do that. Hello. Okay, I'm here to update you on my reading. I have finished Mislaid in Parts Half Known by Shauna Maguire. This one I kind of wish I'd reread Lost in the Moment and Found, albeit to be fair that one wasn't kind of the problem for me because I remember it very clearly because it's my favourite in the series so far. This follows on immediately after the events of that book. So Antsy has made it to the school for wayward children, and she's now being asked, once the kids find out what she can do, as in finding lost things, she's now kind of being put, pressure has been put on her by a group of the kids to basically find their doors. Another group of the kids have basically managed to get her away from that, but they end up trying to escape the whole thing because it gets quite violent quite quickly. They manage to escape the whole thing by going through a door and find themselves in one of the lads' worlds, I think it's Kane's world, where he doesn't really want to be. He didn't want to come back to this world, and he's not happy with this situation. They end up kind of jumping through several different portals throughout the story, one of which ends up finding themselves at this point, and I think it's Christopher that makes a comment about Jurassic Park, and it's just so funny. I think overall it's getting used to the other kids in this story. We're not just following Antsy, we're following them as well, so we're quite heavily following like Christopher and Kane and some of the other kids as well, who I don't fully remember. So Sumi is in here, and we've got a whole bunch of different, I'm sure Cade, not Kane, sorry. Cora, Sumi, Antsy, Christopher. There's a whole bunch of them, and we do jump through several different portals as well in this one, so it does get a little bit complicated at times, but overall I did enjoy it and I gave it 4 stars. I do need to get the last one that's out at the moment as well. Can't remember the name of it, but I need to get to that one, and then I'll be up to date. I don't know if that one's going to be the last one or whether there's going to be more, because we'll be at 10 at that point, because this is book 9 in the series. So yeah, didn't love this one as much as the previous one, but it was still a good one and I had a good time. So the last one to read to complete the Our Fantasy Bingo for 2024 is Exit Strategy by Martha Wells. This one is for the space opera prompt, and this is book 3 or 4 in this series. Book 4. So this series does follow a murder bot, and basically this murder bot is trying to understand, I think they're trying to understand humans a little bit more. They're kind of like a cozy murder bot. It's really funny. It's almost like an oxymoron, because the intention is that they're supposed to keep people in line and murder people that do not stay in line. However, this murder bot is a little bit on the cozy side of things. They like to watch TV, they like to learn about people, they like to learn new things, learn things from shows, things like that. It's kind of like a slice of life in this murder bot's life, essentially. I don't know where we're going here, but Murderbot wasn't programmed to care, so its decision to help the only human who ever showed it respect must be a system glitch, right? Having travelled the width of the galaxy to unearth details of its own murderous transgressions, as well as those of the Grey Chris Corporation, Murderbot is heading home to help Dr. Mensa, its former owner, protector, friend, submit evidence that could prevent Grey Chris from destroying more colonists in its never-ending quest for profit. But who's going to believe a sec unit gone rogue? And what will become of it when it's caught? This is the 4th and final part of the Murderbot Diaries series. The 4th and final part of the Murderbot Diaries? That's not true though, is it? Because System Collapse, which was a bigger one, and then there's been another novella since come out as well. So maybe Martha Wells just intended there just to be 4 and then got carried away. I don't know, but I'm excited to get to this one. It won't take too long to get through because it's a shorter one. I think the audiobook's about 3 hours and 45 minutes, so that's pretty good. So once I have read this one, I'll come back, give you my full thoughts, and I will give you a rundown of exactly what I read for every single prompt, and essentially do my wrap up of Our Fantasy in this video as well, so that I don't need to do a separate video for that. So yeah, let's get on with this one. Okay, hello, we are here for the final part of this video, which is to wrap Our Fantasy Bingo up. I did in fact finish Exit Strategy by Martha Wells, and I did give this one 3.5 stars. This is my lowest rating of this series, and I think the problem is a little bit like Mislaid in Parts Half Known. It's been a while since I've picked one of these up, so I couldn't quite remember where the last one left off, and I found myself in the dark a little bit about what was going on with this one. So I think the rest of this series I might need to binge at some point. I'm hoping that there will be a prompt that I can fit the next one on of this series for Our Fantasy Bingo 2025, and maybe I can binge my way through these. So April is going to be the month of 30 books in 30 days, so this could be a good opportunity to try and binge them. I do have 3 left in the series, one of which is a full novel, and that is the next in the series. So we'll see what happens, but 3.5 stars for this one. So as far as wrapping Our Fantasy Bingo up is concerned, I do have open, we're sat here because I do have open on my screen, I've got my Our Fantasy Bingo tracker, and then I also have open the Our Fantasy Bingo Storygraph page as well, so that I can tell you what the hard modes were. There are 2 modes to this, if you did not know. There's hard mode and normal mode. Hard mode just gives you an extra little prompt to make the challenge a little bit harder for yourself, some of which I have dipped in and out of, just pure accident for the most part. So I am going to tell you what I originally planned to read and then what I ended up reading. For a good portion of this, I stuck to my TBR, which is great news. The ones that I didn't tended to be on the basis, for a couple of them, it was that I'm not reading high fantasy anymore or epic fantasy anymore. So I just swapped the book out, or maybe the book just didn't intrigue me anymore. So again, I swapped the book out. Or I found something, I was, you know, it was getting to crunch point, and I found something else to slot in that I'd already read instead. So let's go through them one by one. The first prompt is the first in a series, and hard mode for this is that there are 3 or more books in the series. So for this one, there was only 1 book in this series when I picked it up, and actually when I picked this up, the second one had just come out, I think. So I don't know if there's going to be more or not, but for right now this is a duology, and the book that I was supposed to pick up was Play of Shadows by Sebastian de Castell, and as I've mentioned, I am not currently in my high epic fantasy era, and I didn't pick this one up. I was trying to get my way through Crucible of Chaos last year and was really struggling with it, and I knew it was me that was the problem, not the book, so I actually decided to put it down. You need to read that one before Play of Shadows. So I can't pick Play of Shadows up right now even if I wanted to. So I did decide to swap it out for All That's Left in the World by Eric J. Brown, and this was really good. I had a very good time with this one, and I am glad that I finally got to it because I think I'd had this one for a while on my shelf, so I am glad that I did finally get to this one. Okay, next is alliterative title, so a book that has a title where several words start with the same letter, and hard mode was for 3 or more words with the same letter. This one I did not go hard mode for. My original plan was for Come Closer by Sarah Gran, and I actually did read that one and I had a very good time with it. It was a really good book. I have since unhauled it, so no longer have it, but yeah, I did really enjoy that one. It was a very good book indeed. Next is Under the Surface, and this is a book that has a setting underwater or under the surface, a cave for example. Hard mode for this was that at least half of the book takes place underground or underwater, and my plan for this one was The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling, and this is the book that I did decide to proceed with. I did end up DNFing this one though, maybe about 100 pages in. I was really struggling with this one. I had a really hard time with it. I just wasn't gelling with the characters at all. I mean, we only had one main character, and then another character kind of came in over comms, but she was underground in a cave and she found herself stuck. And I just wasn't gelling with it too well and wasn't having a good time. So I did make the decision to DNF this one. I think DNF still can't. I hope, otherwise I haven't completed this challenge. Fingers crossed, but I did stick with the book that I originally was going to go with on my TBR, so that is good news. Next is Criminals. So this is a book that features a criminal. This could be a thief, an assassin, someone who commits mail fraud, etc, etc, depending on the book. The hard mode for this was that it features a heist. I did not go hard mode for this. My original book that I was going to go for was The Crimson Moth by Kristen Ciccarelli, and I actually did go with this one as well. I had a fantastic time with this book. I wasn't anticipating much from this, I'm not gonna lie, and I was never gonna get it. In fact, I still had the fancy YA box at the time when this was coming through in it, and I skipped the box. I'm now so mad at myself for doing that because I didn't think it was going to be up my street, but I ended up picking this up because the hype was, it got to me, okay? It got to me. And I loved it. I had a fantastic time, gave it 4.5 stars. I have since read the sequel and also gave that 4.5 stars. And I think this is actually a series that I would enjoy more upon reread, to be fair. If I reread them back to back, I think I would love it even more. So yeah, stuck to the book that I put on my TBR originally. Also good news. Okay, next we do have Dreams. So this is where a character experiences dreams, magical or otherwise. Now this one I had to do quite a bit of research on. I was really struggling with and I wasn't sure what to go with, and on the Fantasy Storygraph recommendations page there was T. Kingfisher's What Feasts at Night. In fact, both of the books from the series were featured on that, so I decided to go ahead with that one. Hard mode for this was that the dream was not mystical or magical, it was just a normal dream or nightmare, and as far as I'm aware, this was not hard mode. I don't know fully where the dream aspect came into this. I think they ended up in like a dreamlike state, I don't know, I can't remember. Anyway, so I did end up just going with this one from a recommendation from Storygraph because I scrolled for ages. I didn't know what else to go with, and this was originally on my TBR? Yes, it was. It was originally on my TBR, so I assume that it is correct. Somebody somewhere might have pulled me up on that, I don't know, but I assume that this is correct. I really enjoyed this. I ended up unhauling because I had the paperback for the first one and then the hardback for the second one, and I've ended up unhauling them only to find that the next in the series is coming out later on this year, so that's a shame. It is what it is. Maybe I will end up buying them again, who the heck knows, but we'll see, because I do enjoy this series. I think it's very good, but we'll see. Okay, next we have entitled Animals, and this is to feature an animal in the title. But this does not have to, the book doesn't have to have the animal within the book though, like within the story. It can just be in the title. And hard mode for this one is that the animal in the title is a sci-fi or fantastical animal. So I ended up not going for hard mode for this one, and I went for Bunny by Mona Award. This was also my original pick for my TBR, and I did end up DNFing this one as well. It was a Patreon pick for me and I wasn't having a good time, and I did DNF it, unfortunately. Again, I hope that DNFs count. I did give it the good old college try, but you know, it didn't work out for me. It just was not one for me, and I didn't anticipate that it was going to be, quite frankly. I'd always been anxious about picking this one up, so I thought if I made it a Patreon buddy read, it would force me to do so, but it just didn't work out well for me, unfortunately. It is what it is. So Bunny by Mona Award. Okay, next we have Bard. So to read a book where the primary protagonist is a bard, storyteller, singer, etc, etc, and the hard mode for this one is that the character is specifically called a bard in the book, and my original pick for this was A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross, and I did end up going for this one. I really enjoyed this series. It was very good. I ended up binging both Rebecca Ross's series last year. The two newer ones, not one of her. I know she's done like the Queen's Rising series or whatever that one's called. I haven't read that one, but the other two newer ones, the Divine Rival series and then this series as well, and I quite liked both of them, but this one I really did enjoy. I thought it was very good. So yeah, I did complete this one, and I also completed hard mode, which was great news. Okay, next we had prologue and epilogue. So this is a book that features a prologue or an epilogue, and hard mode is that it features both. My intention with this one was to go for Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig, and this is what I ended up going for, and it does feature both a prologue and an epilogue. So I also got hard mode on this one. Really enjoyed this series. I thought it was fantastic. This is another one that I think if I was to reread again, I would probably enjoy it a second time around, especially if I binged the series. So I had a very good time with this series and would definitely read again. Okay, next was for a self-published or indie published author, and the hard mode for this one was to pick an author that had 100 ratings or less on Goodreads, or was featured, done an AMA or R Fantasy. Now at the time when I picked this book up, it had less than 100 ratings. When I finished the book, actually, it had less than 100 ratings because I got an early copy of this from the author on Goodreads. So it does now have 182, but at the time when I read it, it had less than 100 because I had an early copy. And the book in question was Mina and the Cult by Amy McCaw. I did originally plan to pick this one up, and this is the one that I did end up finishing. I loved this series. It was fantastic, and Amy did very kindly send me an early copy of this one. She also signed it for me. So at the time of reading this, I completed hard mode. Right now it's not completed because there's over 100 ratings, but at the time of reading it, I completed hard mode. I think that still counts, right? If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's absolutely fine. But at the time of completing, there were less than 100 ratings on Goodreads. So this was a fantastic series, by the way. I would recommend if you were looking for an indie published author with a horror YA story. I would highly recommend this. It was very good. Vampires and set in New Orleans. Can't recommend it enough. Okay, next is Romantasy, and the hard mode for this one is that the main character is a queer character, and my original plan for this one was to go for Lady of Darkness by Melissa K. Rurich, and I did end up going for this one. I did read this one while I was in Turkey last year in April, and I had a very good time with it. Was it in Turkey last year in April? Yeah, I think it was. And I had a very good time with it. I did think that it was a copycat of ACOTAR, I will say. essentially. The characters like have incredibly similar names and they have incredibly similar personalities. I think a lot has been, you know, influenced by ACOTAR. I, at the time, didn't enjoy it enough that I was certain that I was going to continue on with the series, but I would like to. It's now been picked up by a publisher, so they're slowly but surely, you know, drip feeding the books out, but I do think I want to continue on. I may reread this though, because I did find that I was getting in my head too much about it being too much like ACOTAR, and I think now that I know that, going in a second time, I might enjoy it a little bit more for the story that it is. I got too hung up on some of the character names and stuff like that. Like some of the character names were just so similar to the others. So I may reread this one, but I did read this one. It was my intention to do so in my TBR, and I stuck to my TBR with this. Okay, next we have Dark Academia. So read a book that features a dark academia setting, a school setting, a university setting, etc, etc. And the hard mode for this one is that the school is entirely mundane. Now my plan for this was to go for Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn, and I didn't end up picking that one up. I think I was waiting for like a release date or something on Oathbound, the third one in the series, and I think I was waiting. Eventually we did get that, but I ended up completing this with a different book anyway at that point. So I did end up going for The Coven by Harper L. Woods. I really enjoyed this. It came in a subscription box. It came in the Romantasy box in October last year, and I loved this so much. It was fantastic. I haven't yet picked up Cursed, which is the second one, but I intend to do so. But I really enjoyed this. I had a very good time. It does not complete the hard mode because it is a magical university, but I loved this. It was absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to continue the next one. It packed a punch as well, considering it was quite short. It really packed a punch. Struggles. But yeah, I did end up going for this one, but did deviate off the TBR. Okay, next is Multiple POV. So for this one, the prompt was to read a book that had at least 3 POVs in it. Hard mode was that it had 5 or more. And my intention was to go for We Ate the Dark by Mallory Pearson, maybe. I didn't end up picking this one up, and I no longer own the book. I think I tried it, got about 50 pages in, didn't like it. I made the decision very quickly to DNF that book. So I did end up going for Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir instead. I started my, I can't remember what this series is called. Whatever this series is called. Locked Tombs series. I started my Locked Tombs series reading last year with Gideon and absolutely loved it, and just binged these two, Gideon and Harrow. This does have multiple POVs in this one, and I do need to continue on with it, but I'm just waiting for a release date on Electo, which I think the majority of, you know, the reading world is as well. Probably has been doing so for a lot longer than I have, but alas, I'm waiting for the next one in the series to have a release date. But I loved this one. It was absolutely fantastic. It does have multiple POVs, but not more than 5, so it doesn't count for hard mode. Okay, next we do have published in 2024, so obviously a book published in 2024. The hard mode for this was that it is the author's debut novel, and I originally was going to go for Dead Girls Walking. This was another one that I started but just could not get into at all, and I do think that I've unhauled this one as well on that basis. You know, I've been doing my big purge, and I think I just got rid of anything that I tried and just didn't get on with and didn't have the urge to try again. So, you know, these books are better on somebody else's shelves that are going to enjoy them more than me. So I did get rid of that one, and the book that I did end up going for was The Haunting of Velkwood instead. I really enjoyed this one. It doesn't count for hard mode as far as I'm aware. I'm fairly certain that Gwendolyn Kist has done more books. So, but I liked this one. I thought it was very good, and I had a good time with it. So that is the one that I went for with this prompt. Okay, next we have a character with a disability. So the prompt for this one is that an important character within the book has a physical or mental disability. Hard mode is that it's the main character. So for this one, my intention was to go with Clementine Book 2, which I did end up going for by Tilly Walden. And the main character in this one does have a physical disability. She's an amputee. One of her legs she no longer has. So this was good. I really enjoyed it. I like this series. I have gotten rid of both books 1 and 2. I've unhauled them in my big purge. I don't know if I'm going to continue on with the series, if the series continues on, but I just didn't want to hold on to them anymore. I'm not going to reread them, so we'll see if there's another way that I can maybe get hold of them if they do continue to come out, maybe the library or something. But yeah, I did complete this one, and it was originally on my TBR and counts for hard mode. Okay, the next prompt is published in the 90s. Now, this one I was struggling with. I was originally going to go with Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, and I just, as we got closer and closer to the 1st of April, well, the end of March, in which this our fantasy ends and the next one starts on the 1st of April. As we got closer and closer, I hadn't read it, and then I was frantically looking around for something that was published in the 90s that was a little bit shorter that maybe I could pick up, try and smash out before the end of March, and I just couldn't do it. So I ended up substituting this prompt. You can substitute one prompt for a different prompt on a previous bingo board, just one. And again, you can do one reread as well. So I didn't do a reread on this go round, but I did do a substitution. And for this one, I substituted for a sequel, and I ended up going for Mislaid in Parts Half Known by Shauna Maguire. So I did pick this one up. I had a very good time with this one. It was probably not my least favourite, I don't think, but I didn't love it as much as I have previously loved books in this series, and I think it's because I've been away from the series for so long. I remember Lost and Found, whatever the one before this one is called. I remember that one very clearly because it is my favourite in the series, but this deals heavy not only with Ansi from the previous book, but with some of the other characters from previous books. And because I haven't read those in such a long time, it took me a while to get into these characters again and who they were and where they'd come from. So I didn't gel with it 100%, but I'm glad to be back in this world. There is another one since that has come out, but I'm glad to have finally gotten to this one. So I did end up doing a substitution for this prompt. It is what it is. I promise I will get to Jurassic Park. It'll probably go on 2025's bingo board, and I will get to it this year, I promise. Okay, next prompt is Orcs, Trolls and Goblins. Oh my. And the prompt is that the book features Orcs, Trolls and Goblins. Hard mode is that the main character is an orc, troll or goblin. Now for this one, I did have The Grey Bastards planned by Jonathan French, in which our main character is a half orc, and I didn't end up picking this one up. Again, I'm not in my epic high fantasy era right now. I have kept the book, I haven't unhauled it because I do still want to read it, but I did end up going for The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. Instead, there are orcs featured in this book, so I ended up picking this one up. Loved this. This was fantastic. Loved it a lot more than The Hobbit, which is great news because I really didn't like The Hobbit. I think I gave The Hobbit 2 stars. I think this got 4. I do need to continue on with the series, so there is an opportunity for me to put the second one on the next fantasy bingo for 2025. So I'm hoping that there will be a prompt in there that I can put the next one on. Fingers crossed. But yeah, I did read The Fellowship of the Ring. Okay, next we have a space opera, and the hard mode for this one is that it's written by an author of marginalized gender identity, so women, trans people, non-binary people, etc, etc. And my intention with this one was to go for Exit Strategy by Martha Wells, and that is exactly what I have read within this video. Obviously Martha Wells is a woman, so the hard mode does count for this one, and I had a good time with this. Didn't love it as much as I've loved the previous books in the series, as I've just mentioned, but I did enjoy it nonetheless, and I have completed the book that was originally on the TBR. Success! Next we do have Author of Colour. This is another one that I've completed within this video, and the hard mode for this is that the book was published within the last 5 years. This didn't complete for hard mode. The book in question was The Deep by River Solomon, and it was originally on my TBR as well, so success for that. And I thought that this one was okay. I didn't love it. It wasn't for me, I don't think, but I can see what it was trying to do, but I didn't love it, unfortunately. It was okay. I didn't love it though. It wasn't for me. Okay, next we have Survival. So the main intention with this one is that the main characters have got to survive something, whether it be an apocalypse or a war or something else entirely. And hard mode for this one was that it wasn't a super virus or a pandemic. So I ended up going hard mode for this one. My intention was The September House by Carissa Orlando, and that is exactly what I read. I decided to take a little bit of a twist with this one, and the thing that they're surviving in this is the hauntings. This is a haunted house story, and they are trying to survive the hauntings. And I thought that this was a fun little twist, and I loved this book. This was fantastic. It's been on my mind ever since, and I'm absolutely obsessed. But it's definitely the book, I think, that's got me fully into haunted house stories, and I love them now. I'm obsessed. So I did end up going for the book that I originally planned to pick, and it was hard mode. Success. Okay, next is Judge a Book by its cover, and this is a book that you picked up based on the cover. The hard mode is that you solely picked it up based on the cover. You didn't know what the synopsis was. I didn't do hard mode for this one, but the book that I originally planned to read was All That's Left in the World Volume 1, and that is exactly what I read. I didn't love this, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't love it. I've unhauled it, and I'm not gonna continue the series. It wasn't what I thought it was gonna be, which is a shame. However, during the process of reading this, I think I read it as part of 30 Books in 30 Days in April last year during I think it was 24 manga in 24 hours challenge that I did, and I ended up finding a couple of other series that I enjoyed more than this one, so that was good news, but it was just a shame that this wasn't one of the ones that I really enjoyed. Okay, next we have Set in a Small Town. So the hard mode for this one is that the town can be real or fictional, but the broader setting must be set in our real world. This isn't hard mode at all. My intention with this one was Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne, and I did in fact read this one. In fact, I have read 2 more since this one as well. So within this time frame, so any of them could have counted. Actually, not the second one, because that was set at sea, but this one and the third one were set in Tawny in the small town, and I really enjoy this series. It's a 4-star series for me so far, and I'm having a blast with it. The third one has been my favourite at 4.5 stars, but I'm having such a good time with it. Can't recommend it enough. It is a small town cozy fantasy, so, and it's queer as well, and it gets queerer and queerer as you go on with the books because people keep complaining it's too queer, so she makes it queerer, which is fantastic. Okay, next is 5 short stories collection. So the hard mode for this one is an entire speculative anthology or collection. I was gonna go for The Black Girl Survives in this one, but I just didn't make my way through it at all. Like, I started it, I've made my way through the first 2 stories. I think I intend to continue on with it, but I didn't get through it as quick as I thought I was going to. So I did end up stumbling actually across last year, late last year, the Creature Feature collection, in which I have finished within this log, so you will have seen. But I did end up stumbling across that one, and it is actually 6 stories instead of 5, and it is an entire anthology collection, so I have completed it, as far as I'm concerned anyway. I think I have. So I did enjoy this one though. There was only obviously one that got like 1 star, but everything else got 3.5 or more, and I really enjoyed this collection. I thought it was fantastic, and I'm hoping there is a new one coming out very soon. I'm hoping to do that one. I think the 5 short stories collection is a prompt that is featured every single year, so I'm gonna do the next collection for that one, I think, because I really enjoyed the series. Okay, next was Eldritch Creature. So this is to feature a being that's uncanny, unearthly and weird. Can be a god or monster from another plane or realm, and is usually beyond mortal understanding. Sorry, I needed to read the prompt because I couldn't remember. And hard mode is that the book is not related to the Cthulhu mythos. I don't know. I'm not sure. Regardless, I had to do a lot of research on this one. I was going to do Someone You Could Build a Nest In, but I just haven't picked it up. I think I'm anxious that it's more epic fantasy than the horror side of things, and I don't think that's the case. I think it's a very good mix of fantasy and horror. Jade loved it, and she thinks that I'm really going to enjoy it, so I do need to pick that one up. Again, I might try and put it back on this year's bingo board, 2025's bingo board, but what I did end up going for instead was Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. I had a good scroll through the Storygraph prompt, and had a look at what other people have recommended. Sometimes you look at a book and you go, that should not be in there, that makes no sense. And other times you look at a book and go, oh yeah, that does count actually, I completely forgot about that, because I'd already read this when I was scrolling through. I was trying to fill the prompts in and see what I had left. So this one does count. I really enjoyed this. This was fantastic and I would highly, highly, highly recommend it. Okay, next we have reference material. So this is a book that features things like a map or a footnotes or a glossary, etc, etc. And hard mode is that the book contains at least 2 types of reference material. My intention with this was to go for Cursed Cocktails, and that is the book that I ended up going for. I can't find my copy. I don't know if I've unhauled it. I don't think I have. I just don't know what I've done with it. It is what it's literally right there. I've just seen it. I do still have my copy. I can't remember what the reference material was in here, but there is a reference material in it, just one, so no hard mode. But I really enjoyed this. This was fantastic. A lot better than I thought it was going to be. I don't know what I thought it was going to be, but it was better than I thought it was going to be, and I really had a good time with it. So I did stick with my TBR for that one. And then last but by no means least, we have book club or read along book. I'm gonna have to read the prompt for this one again as well. So the prompt for this is any past or active book clubs count as well as past or active read alongs, and the hard mode for this one is that it must be a current selection of either a book club or read along and participate in the discussion. I haven't done hard mode for this one, and my intention was to go for Forged by Magic, which I do still really want to read and I still have on my Kindle, but I didn't end up getting around to it, and I didn't have chance, I wouldn't have had time to complete it in March by the end of this you know, by the end. So I did end up having another scroll through the previous books that have been on for book clubs and read-alongs, and I ended up putting in The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett, which I read earlier on last year, and it was good. I don't know if I'm going to continue on with the series, but I haven't hauled my copy. As beautiful as the book was, I haven't hauled my copy. Fortunately, my dust jacket was laminating when it arrived, so I'm not too mad about unhauling it, but I am still a little bit upset about it because the copy was stunning, and the next one is also beautiful, but it is what it is. I don't know if I'm going to continue on, but it was fine and I liked it, you know. It was a meh for me, but it did not complete the hard mode for that one. And that is the last prompt. So I did in fact complete my bingo board. The completed bingo board looks like this. I put all the books on except for the 5 short story collection because that was a bit difficult to put on, but I've put all the books on the bingo board. This was so much fun and I'm very excited to do it again. I've ended up bastardizing the tracker as well. Somebody else has made a tracker for Fantasy Bingo, which is incredible, and kudos to them because it's so easy to keep track of what you're doing. But I ended up bastardizing that and making my own for the horror bingo as well, which I do also, and I do need to try and get on top of that as well. But I'm excited to build up, see what the prompts are for 2025 and build up a TBR for that one as well, so that you will be getting a TBR for the 2025 Fantasy Bingo very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. But yeah, I've managed to complete it and I'm so proud of myself because I didn't complete in 2023, so I'm glad that I've completed 2024's bingo board. Very proud of myself indeed. Sometimes it is a little bit of trial and error. You can set a TBR, but sometimes it's a case of slotting in where you can as you get closer to the deadline and just finishing off what you can. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. Did you take part in our Fantasy Bingo 2024? Are you going to take part in 2025? Did you complete it if you took part in 2024? Let me know in the comments down below. And have you read any of these books? Is there anything that you would recommend me in the future based off of these? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will see you in whatever comes next. Bye for now.